guys, welcome back to another reading video. Today, I'll be doing part 2 of Captain Underpants 3 More Wedgie Powered Adventures in 1. And this time, I'm doing Captain Underpants at the Perilous plot of Professor Poopypants. There you see Poopypants, and there is his robotic leg. In our last 4 adventures, we tried to save our crazy principal from disaster. He thought he was a real superhero, but he wasn't. We didn't think things could get any worse, but they did. The top secret truth about Captain Underpants, all new. So once upon a time, there were 2 cool kids named George and Harold. We are awesome. Me too. They had an mean principal named Mr. Krupp. Blah, blah, blah. Mr. Krupp was very mean to George and Harold. Blah, blah, blah. So they bought the 3D Hypno Ring. They used it to hypnotize Mr. Krupp. You will obey us. Okie dokie. But they made a terrible mistake. You are now Captain Underpants. Haha, okay. Hey, come back, Mr. Krupp. Tra-la-la. Mr. Krupp thought he was Captain Underpants, but he didn't have any superpowers. They had a lot of adventures. One time they even got attacked by a UFO. Uh-oh. They all got took into the spaceship, and George stole some alien power juice. Then Mr. Krupp got eaten by a big evil dandelion. You had to be there. So George gave him some superpower juice. And then he got superpowers. Now Captain Underpants has amazing strength. He can even fly, too. The only way George and Harold can stop Captain Underpants from causing trouble is by pouring water on his head. This makes him turn back into Mr. Krupp. Hey, Bob, but beware, because whenever Mr. Krupp hears somebody snap their fingers, he turns back into you-know-who. Oh no, here we go again. Tra-la-la. The end. Treehouse Comics Incorporated. Chapter 1. George and Harold. This is George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left with the tie and flat top. Harold is the one on the right with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now. All of the experts at Jerome Hortowitz Elementary School had their opinions about George and Harold. Their guidance counselor, Mr. Rected, thought the boys suffered from ADD. The school psychologist, Miss Laper, diagnosed them with ADHD. And the mean old principal, Mr. Krupp, just thought they were just plain old BAD, bad. If you ask me, George and Harold simply suffer from IBSS, incredibly boring school syndrome. You see, George and Harold weren't really bad kids. They were very bright, good, natured kids, natured boys. Their only problem was that they were bored in school, so they took it upon themselves to liven things up for everybody. Wasn't that thoughtful of them? Our teachers don't use deodorant. Unfortunately, George and Harold's thoughtfulness got them into trouble every now and then. Sometimes it got them into a lot of trouble, and one time it got them into so much trouble it almost caused the entire planet to be taken over by a ruthless, medicinal, mad scientist guy in a giant robot suit. Before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. By standard, Chapter 2. All Hail New Switzerland. Everybody knows New Switzerland is a small country on just southeast of Greenland. You probably know all about New Switzerland's natural resources and systems of government, but here's something you didn't know about New Switzerland that I'll bet you didn't know. Everybody in New Switzerland has a silly name. Just ask their president, the Honorable Chuckles Jingleberry McMonkeyburger Jr., or his lovely wife, Stinky. They'll tell you about New Switzerland's proud silly name heritage. They'll tell you about the cultural significance of silly names, and then they'll probably tell you a really long, boring story of how this stupid tradition got started. You'll skip that part, okay? Just remember that everybody in New Switzerland has a silly name, from the richest to the poorest, or from the dumbest to the smartest. Jiggles, T, Chunky, Smugs, Tipper, Hugh, Zipper, Dripper, Ivana, Gonna, D, Barfroom, Professor Pippy, P, Poopypants. And speaking of the smartest, let me introduce you to Professor Pippy P. Poopypants. That's the statue of him down there on the bottom of the right-hand corner of the page. Now, Pippy P. Poopypants was probably the smartest person in all of New Switzerland. He graduated at the head of his class at Chunky Q Boogernose University, and afterward spent all his time creating wild and fantastic inventions. Let's look in on him, shall we? Back in his private laboratory, Professor P. Poopypants was just putting the finishing touches on two wonderful new inventions: the Shrinky Pig 2000 and the Goosey Grow 4000. Professor Poopypants called for his assistant, Pork Belly Funky Skunk. Mr. Funky Skunk, Mr. Funky Skunk, Pip yelled, I am now ready to test my new inventions. Pork Belly took notes while the professor aimed his Shrinky Pig 2000 at a hideous pile of rubbish. A powerful beam of energy blasted the garbage heap. Suddenly, the large pile of rubbish shrank to the size of a gumball. Hooray, it works! Cried Professor Poopypants. Now I must try the Goosey Grow 4000. Pippy and Pork Belly aimed the Goosey Grow 4000 at an ordinary hot dog with mustard. Went another beam of energy. Suddenly, the hot dog grew and grew until it crashed through the walls of the laboratory. We did it! Exclaimed Pork Belly. What do you mean, we? Yelled Professor Poopypants. I did it. I am the genius. You're just a lowly assistant. And don't you forget it. Sorry, boss, said Pork Belly. With these two inventions, exclaimed Professor Poopypants, I'll be able to solve the world's rubbish problem and create enough food for everyone on the entire planet. Finally, it looked as if all of the Earth's dilemmas will be fixed forever. But who would have believed that in just a few short weeks, Professor Poopypants will be trying to take over the planet in a fit of frenzied rage? Well, dear readers, the tragic tale is about to unfold. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 3, The Field Trip. Jerome Hortworth's elementary school was having its big annual field trip to Pequa Pizza Palace. All of the kids have bought their permission slips and were lined up to get on the bus. Dr. Harold could hardly wait to eat pizza and play video games all afternoon. This is gonna rule. This is gonna rule, said George. Yeah, if we ever get there, said Harold. Hey, said George, let's change the letters around on the school sign while we're waiting. Good idea, said Harold. So George and Harold ran over to the sign and began their thoughtfulness. Unfortunately, the boys didn't notice the dark, foreboding presence lurking nearby the bushes. Whoop. Wait. Just you two. Okay, good. That was page 201. Good. In the bushes. Okay, I'll finish this page. Aha! Cried Mr. Crump. I caught you boys red-handed. Uh-oh, said George. Heh, laughed Harold. This is just a little joke. A joke! Yelled Mr. Crump. Do you boys think that's funny? George and Harold thought for a moment. Well, yeah, said George. Don't you? Asked Harold. No, I don't think it's funny, yelled Mr. Crump. I think it's rude and offensive. That's why it's funny, said George. Please don't fart in a diaper. Jerome Hortworth Elementary. Oh, said Mr. Crump. You boys like to laugh, huh? Well, here's a good one. You two are officially banned from the school field trip. Instead of eating pizza, you spent the afternoon cleaning up the teacher's lounge. Isn't that funny? No way, said Harold. That's not funny at all, said George. That's a cruel and unusual punishment. That's why it's funny, Mr. Crump snarled. Chapter 4, Left Behind. Mr. Crump marched George and Harold over to the janitor's closet. You can use these supplies to clean the teacher's lounge, said Mr. Crump. I want it spotless by the time I get back. Mr. Crump went outside, climbed onto the school bus, and laughed loudly as the buses pulled away. The teachers all pointed at George and Harold and laughed too. Rats, said Harold. I thought we were going to have fun today. We can still have fun. We still have fun, said George. All we need is this ladder, the bag of powdered paste, and those big boxes of styrofoam were meat thingies. So George and Harold carried their supplies to the teacher's lounge and got down to business. By now, they would have made a comic, just like in The Wrath of the Wicked Wedgie Woman, where, yeah, look how... Yeah, I can... At the sink, George and Harold carefully pulled the sprayer nozzle, while Harold carefully taped the sprayer handle on the on position. Then the two boys put the nozzle back, making sure the sprayer was sprayer head was pointed in the right direction. Next, George held the ladder steady while Harold climbed up to the ceiling fan. There he began scooping generous amounts of powder paste onto the tops of the fan blades. "Is this right?" asked Harold. "Yeah," said George. "Try to get the most of it on the end of the blade. "Got it," said Harold. George closed all the blinds while Harold adjusted the ceiling fan so it will turn on when the lights came on. Finally, the boys filled the refrigerator with worm-shaped styrofoam packaging pellets. This is going to be fun," said Harold. "Not for the teachers," laughed George. Wow, the sun nearly fell again. Chapter 5. The fun begins. An hour or so later, the buses returned to the school. All of the children got off and packed their stuff and got ready to go home. Mr. Fide, the science teacher, was on school bus duty. The rest of the teachers scattered around George and Harold and began testing them. "You kids did miss a fun field trip," said Miss Ribble. "The pizza was so delicious. Too bad you didn't get any. Oh yeah, by the way, if you're thinking why is Miss Ribble nice and she turned nice at the end of the last book, is because this book is actually before the Wrath of the Wedgie Woman, and for some reason they put it in misorder. So this was first, and then this was second. Okay, good. I wanted to bring you back a pizza," said Mr. Meter, "but I ate it on the bus." He threw an empty pizza box at George and Harold's feet, and the teachers howled with laughter. "Maybe you could lick the cheese off the box," Mr. Crump roared. The teachers eventually got tired of taunting George and Harold, so they retreated to the teacher's loud to relax. Hey, how come it's so dark in here?" asked Mr. Reader as he flicked on the lights. The ceiling fan began rotating very slowly. Miss Ribble went to the sink and turned on the tap. Suddenly, the spray nozzle sprayed cold water all over her. "Ah!" she screamed. "Somebody turn the water off!" The other teachers sprang up and tried to help. They all got sprayed, too. The ceiling fan was rotating faster now, and some of the powdered paste had begun flying off the fan blades. The teachers struggled with the tap, punching and jumping each other. Finally, somebody turned the water off, but not before everybody was though roughly soaked. The ceiling fan was all spinning at full speed. All the powder on the fan blades had just been flung off. And it was now floating down to the wet teachers. "Hey, what the?" cried Mr. Meter. "What is all this sticky stuff?" yelled Miss Anthrope. By now, the teachers were covered in gooey, sticky paste, and it did take a genius to know that George and Harold were behind all this. "Those brats had better not touch my Diet Cola," Miss Ribble shouted. She dashed to the refrigerator and swung the door open. Swish! Suddenly, thousands of tiny styrofoam styrofoam pellets flew out into the room. The wind from the ceiling fan blew the pellets around and around. Naturally, they landed on the stickiest thing in the room, the teachers. "Ah!" screamed the teachers. They ran out of the teachers' lounge, screaming and yelling. George and Harold saw what looked like a group of giant evil snowmen heading straight towards them. "Got a good idea," said George. "What?" asked Harold. "Run!" said George. Chapter 6. Bye-bye, Mr. Fine. The next day, George and Harold's science teacher, Mr. Fine, knocked on Mr. Crump's door. "What do you want?" barked Mr. Crump. "I've just come to resign," said Mr. Fine. I can't just take it on. I just can't take it anymore." "Now hold on, pal," said Mr. Crump. Being a teacher is hard work. You can't just quit your job when things aren't." "You don't understand," said Mr. Crump. "I think I'm cracking up." "What do you mean?" asked Mr. Crump. "Well," said Mr. Fine, "it all started a few months ago when I had this dream that I got eaten up by a talking toilet. Then I started hearing cats and dogs meowing and growling in the classroom. Then imagine that the school got flooded with green sticky goop. And just yesterday, I thought I just saw a group of abominable snowmen chasing two boys down the hallway." Now wait just a minute, Morty," said Mr. Crump. "All that can be explained. And a few days ago," said Mr. Fine, I thought I saw a big fat bald guy in his underwear fly out of the window." "Holy cow," said Mr. Crump. "You are crazy." So Mr. Fine handed in his resignation and left Jerome Horker's Elementary School for the greener pastures of the Peacock Valley, home for the reality challenge. "Now where am I going to find a new science teacher on such short notice?" said Mr. Crump. "Where? Oh, where?" Chapter 7. Here, oh here. Remember that Poopypants guy I was telling you back in Chapter 2? Well, things had been going too well in the past for him in the past several weeks. Professor Poopypants had come to America to share the Shrinky Pig 2000 and the Goozy Grow 4000 with the world. But nobody seemed to hear about his inventions because they were all too busy laughing at his silly name. Poor Pippy Poopypants had been laughing out of every major scientific institution in the U.S. He'd be giggled out of Georgetown, howled out of Harvard, yucked out of Yale, snickered out of Stanford, and chuckled out of the Chattanooga State Technical Community College. Professor Poopypants was running out of money, and there was no place left for him to turn. And one day, the professor walked into a New York coffee shop and picked up a newspaper and a message from heaven. Pippy Poopypants found the answer. "That's it!" he cried. "I'll become an elementary school science teacher. I'll work really hard, and soon people will come to respect me and see what a genius I am. Then I can introduce my great inventions to the world." Pippy Poopypants was certain that the one place people would laugh at his name was at an elementary school. "Kids are so accepted and loving," he said. "You can always count on the sweetness and innocence of children." Oh wait, Salt. Chapter 8. The Sweetness and Innocence of Teacher. Hello, boys and girls, said the professor a week later. I'm going to be your new science teacher. My name is Professor Poopypants. Hi. Well, that's my best expression of laughing. All right, settle down, boys and girls. Yes, it's a funny name. I know, but let me explain how I got this name. Please, children, settle down. It's not that funny. Let me assure you, boys and girls. Boys and girls, please stop laughing. All right, I'm going to count to 10. And when I'm done, I want you all to quiet down so we can learn about the wonderful world of science. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and a half. Children, please stop laughing. I know you're all very far behind in your lessons, and we've got a lot of catching up to do. Boys and girls, stop it. I'm going to tell you again. It's not funny. There's no reason that all of you to be laughing at my name. I'm sure we all have funny names if you think about it. Stop it right now, okay? Boys and girls, I'll just wait until you all settle down. I can wait. A week later, things hadn't got any better. Professor Poopypants was really beginning to get angry. How am I going to get through these children? He asked himself. Hey, I got it. I'll create a wonderful new invention. Chapter 9. The Gerbil Jogger 2000. The next morning, Professor Poopypants came to school with an odd-looking miniature robot. Look, children, he said. I've created a new invention using the principles of science. I call it the Gerbil Jogger 2000. Oh, look how happy he is. George is, yeah. The children stopped laughing for a moment and looked with interest at Professor Poopypants' new invention. You see, children, said the professor, some people like to jog, said the professor. Some people and the pets like to jog, and said the professor. And their pets like if you have a dog and their pets like to jog along beside them. That's fine if you have a dog or a cat. But what if you had a pet gerbil? It used to be a big problem, but not anymore. Professor Poopypants opened the glass dome on the Gerbil Jogger 2000 and inserted a cute, fuzzy gerbil. The gerbil pushed his tiny legs against the simple controls, and suddenly the machine came to life. In no time at all, the gerbil was jogging around in the classroom in his robot suit. The children were delighted. Wow, said Connor Mancini. Science is cool. All the other children agreed. This is wonderful, thought Professor Poopypants. I've reached them. Now I can teach them. Excuse me, said George to the professor. What's your middle name? My middle name, said the professor proudly, is Pee-Pee. Why do you ask? At that point, children picked up where they had left off, laughing at Professor Poopypants' ridiculous name. The professor began to shake with anger. Tiny veins in his forehead started growing, and his face turned bright red. I can't take much more of this, the furious professor said through his clenched teeth. I think I might blow a fuse if just one more thing happens. Chapter 10. Just one more thing. Soon afterwards, in reading class, The children all heard the story about the Piper of Hamelin. You know, said George, that story gives me an idea. So George and Helen began working on their newest comic book, Captain Underpants and the Pied Pooper of Pequa. That afternoon, they sneaked into the office and ran off copies to their new adventure to sell on the playground. And everything will be just fine if one of the third graders had left his copy lying around in the hallway. Chapter 11, Captain Underpants and the Pied Pooper of Pequa, by George Barrett and Hal Hutchins. Captain Underpants, once upon a time in Pequa, Ohio, there was a science teacher named whose name was Poopypants. Well, the resolution isn't that good. My middle name is PP. Everybody laughed at his funny name. Ha 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 ha. This made Pippi mad. I'll show them. So he built an army of Gerbil Jogger 2000. Ha ha. He put a Gerbil in each one. Hey man. But he couldn't make them do any evil stuff. Tap tap. Rats. Soon he thought of an evil plan. But of course. And he made a bunch of little headphones and put them on the Gerbils. Hey. Soon Professor Poopypants' army of Gerbil Jogger 2000s were off on an evil rampage. They all headed straight for the school. Ha 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 ha. Help! The Gerbil Jogger 2000s broke into the cafeteria. They just knocked over some cupcakes and now they're attacking the gym teacher. Somebody save the cupcakes. Professor Poopypants and his evil army rounded up all the children. Follow me, ha ha ha. This looks like a job for Captain Underpants. What seems to be the problem? I'm taking these kids to be my slaves. And who do you think you are? I'm Professor Poopypants. Ha ha ha. Oh wait, that's how he looked like in the movie when George and Hal made the Perilous Professor Poopypants comics in the Captain Underpants movie. Yeah. Professor Poopypants was really mad, so he pressed a button on his bow tie, and his bow tie transformed into a giant cyborg. Ha 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 ha. Uh-oh, they had a big fight, but Captain Underpants was faster than a speeding waistband, more powerful than boxer shorts. Owie! And able to leap tall buildings without getting a wedgie. Tra-la-la! Professor Poopypants chased our hero to a car scrapyard. I've got you now, waistband warrior. Now I'm gonna crush you, big crusher thingy 2000. Captain Underpants pressed a button on his utility waistband. Click. And popped the tiny toilet of truth. Click. The Captain Underpants aimed the tiny toilet of truth at Robo Pippi. Flush! I'm rusted! Captain Underpants saved the day! But what about the evil Gerbils? They're not evil. Look, Professor Poopypants was controlling them with this. Is it music? No. Listen. Nah. No. Listen. Babe, I got you, babe. Please, God, make it stop! Ah, help! This would make anybody turn evil. So Captain Underpants destroyed the controller. Hallelujah! Tra-la-la, crunch. Hooray for Captain Underpants! The end. Professor P goes crazy. In his entire life, Professor Poopypants had never been as angry as he was at this At that very moment, he stood in the hallway. Something inside his fragile brain snapped. He began shaking and sweating uncontrollably. Suddenly, a wicked smile stretched across the professor's face. He staggered towards the empty classroom, mumbling to himself and giggling. He had hit rock bottom, and he decided to pull the rest of the planet down with him. Poopypants was going to take over the world. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you... Oh, never mind. I'll just tell you that story. Chapter 13. Honey, I Shrunk the School. Professor Poopypants opened the storage cupboard in his classroom and took out the Shrinky Pig 2000 at the Goosey Grove 4000. He also grabbed the empty Gerbil Jogger 2000 and stumbled outside with his inventions. The crazed professor giggled widely to himself as he aimed the Goosey Grove 4000 at the Gerbil Jogger 2000. Suddenly, the Gerbil Jogger 2000 grew 10 stories high. Professor Poopypants began his long climb up at the side of the giant Gerbil Jogger 2000. It took almost an hour, but eventually he reached the huge glass dome at the top and squeezed his way inside. Mommy, said a little boy who was walking by with his mother, a little old man just crawled into a giant robot suit and is about to take over the school. Oh, for heaven's sake, said his mother. Where do you come up with this nonsense? Next, you will tell me that a giant man in his underwear is fighting a huge robot in the middle of a city. Professor Poopypants was now in control of the colossal Gerbil Jogger 2000. He reached down with his marty arm, picked up the Shrinky Pig 2000 and aimed it at the school. Just then, George and Harold looked out a window. Hey, said George, is that the Gerbil robot thingy? Yeah, said Harold. Why is it big? I don't know, said George, but it's getting bigger by the second. Said Harold. I don't think it's getting bigger. I think we're getting smaller. Chapter 14. The Perilous Plot. Professor Poopypants reached out and picked up the tiny school with his robotic hand. Everybody screamed in horror. In no time at all, eyewitness newswoman Ingrid Ashley was on the scene. What do you want of us? Shouted reporter Ashley. I want a pencil, screamed Professor Poopypants. A pencil? Asked reporter Ashley. Here, take mine. She tossed a yellow pencil towards the giant robot. Professor Poopypants reached out with his giant arm, picked up the Goosey Grove, and aimed it at the pencil. The pencil grew to the size of a tree trunk, and the Professor Poopypants grabbed it. Follow me, he said. The giant robot held the news screw to the center of downtown Pequa. There he found 3 large white billboards. He put down the Shrinky Pig 2000 at the Goosey Grove 4000. He began writing on the billboard with his giant pencil. Chapter 13. The Name Change Chart 2000. Professor Poopypants spent several minutes jotting down a complex code on 3 giant billboards. George and Harold, along with their nearly 1,000 other fellow shrunken students, watched the mad professor from the terrifying clutch of his giant robotic hand. What is this crazy guy up to? Asked Mr. Krupp from his office window. I'll tell you, shouted Poopypants. Everybody on the planet must now change their normal names into silly names using these three charts. Anybody who refuses We'll get shrunk. How do the charts work? Asked Mr. Crow. It's easy, said Professor Poopypants. What's your first name? There, I'm not telling, said Mr. Crow. What is your first name? Shouted Professor Poopypants. All right, said Mr. Crow. It's Benny. All the children giggled. So the first letter of your name is B, said Pippi. Now look at the first chart and find the letter B. Lumpy. Mr. Crump looked at the chart. It says B equals Lumpy. He whined. Good, said Professor Poopypants. Your new first name is Lumpy. All the children laughed. Lumpy Crump, moaned Mr. Crump. I don't want to be called Lumpy Crump. You won't, laughed Professor Poopypants, because you have to change your last name too. Uh-oh, said Mr. Crump. Your last name is Crump, said the professor, which starts with a K and ends with a P. Now find K on the second chart and the letter P on the third chart. Mr. Crump looked at the two charts. K equals potty and P equals biscuit. Wonderful, shouted the professor. Your new last name is Potty Biscuits. Oh no, groaned the principal. My new name is Lumpy Potty Biscuits. The children all howled with laughter. Don't laugh too hard, kiddies, said Professor Poopypants. You all have to change your names too, or I'll shrink you again. Well, as you can imagine, nobody wanted to get shrunk twice, so everybody looked at the three charts and figured out their new silly names. Stephanie York off became Snotty Gorilla Brett. Robbie Steinberg became Loopy Pizza Buns, and poor little Janet Warwick became Poopsie Chucklebutt. This may be the most horrible moment in all of human history, said the local news reporter to her audience. It seems that everyone on Earth must change his or her name to avoid getting shrunk. Good luck to you all. This is Chim Typer Brains reporting for Eyewitness News. Now, back to you, Bugger. Chapter 16, Fluffy and Cheeseball. This is Fluffy Toilet Nose and Cheeseball Water Fanny. Fluffy is the kid on the left with the tie and flat top. Cheeseball is the one on the right with the t-shirt and bad haircut. Remember that now. We gotta do something, cried Fluffy. But what? Said Cheesepuff. We're smaller than two mice. What could we possibly do? Let's go find our old friend, Captain Underpants, said Fluffy. So Fluffy and Cheeseball ran to Mr. Potty Biscuit's office and found him cowering under his desk. I can't believe I'm about to do this, said Fluffy. But here goes nothing. Fluffy snapped his fingers. Snap! Suddenly, a strange change came over Lumpy Potty Biscuits. His worried frown quickly turned into a heroic smile. He rose from behind his desk and thrust out from his chest. In no time at all, Mr. Potty Biscuits had removed his outer clothing and tied a red curtain around his neck. Tra-la-la, sang the hero. Captain Underpants is here. Cool, said Cheeseball, but from now on, you have to call yourself Buttercup Chicken Fanny. The guy in the Gerbil suit says so. Hey, said Captain Underpants, I don't take orders from anybody. Great, said Fluffy. Now fly out that window and bring back that big machine thingy with the lava lamp on top. Yes, sir, said Captain Underpants. Chapter 17, Captain Underpants to the rescue. Captain Underpants flew down and grabbed the Goosey Grow to 4000, but on his way back he was bothered by Professor Poopypants. The evil professor slapped Captain Underpants with the Shrinky Pig 2000. Suddenly, the waistband warrior began to shrink even smaller than before. He flew back to the tiny school carrying an extremely small Goosey Grove 4000, and he dropped it into Fluffy's hand. "Hey, where's Captain Underpants?" asked Fluffy. "I don't know," said Cheeseball. "I think he got shrunk so small that we can't even see him anymore." "Well," said Fluffy, "at least we have this little invention thingy." "How is that going to help us?" asked Cheeseball. "I saw Professor Poopypants use it to make that pencil grow really big," said Fluffy. "It's our only hope of ever getting back to normal size." "I hope it still works," said Cheeseball. Fluffy and Cheeseball dashed to the school kitchen and climbed up the ladder onto the roof. "Maybe if we stop the school with this thing, everyone will grow back to normal size," said Fluffy. "Good idea," said Cheeseball. "Then we could all run away." Chapter 18. Are you there, God? It's us, Fluffy and Cheeseball. Fluffy pointed the Goosey Grove 4000 at the roof of the school and got ready to press the button. But the boys were spotted by Professor Poopypants. Quickly he turned his mighty robotic hand, and Fluffy and Cheeseball slid off the roof. Downward they tumbled through the air. "Oh no!" shouted Cheeseball. "We're doomed!" "Wait a second," cried Fluffy. "Do you have a piece of paper on you?" "Yeah," screamed Cheeseball. Right in my pocket. But what good is it going to do us now?" "Quick!" cried Fluffy. "Fall into a paper airplane!" "What kind of paper airplane?" asked Cheeseball. "Any kind!" screamed Fluffy. "Just do it now!" Quickly, Cheeseball folded the paper into a goofy-looking glider. "How's this?" he screamed. "Great!" yelled Fluffy. "Now hold it steady!" Fluffy pointed the tiny Goosey Grove 4000 at Cheeseball's airplane, and he pressed the button. Suddenly, Cheeseball's airplane grew to enormous size. Fluffy and Cheeseball flopped into it, and the paper airplane took off, gliding through the air. "Oh, man!" cried Cheeseball. "I can't believe that worked." "We're not out of this yet," yelled Fluffy. Chapter 19. The Flight of the Goofy Glider. Fluffy and Cheeseball had to admit it was pretty cool flying over the city streets on a paper airplane. They didn't even seem to mind the fact they were only about 2 centimeters tall each. But if you could imagine the boys' concern when they headed straight for a wood chipper. "Oh no!" cried Fluffy. "We're going to get wood chipper to death!" Cheeseball couldn't look. He put his hands over his eyes and waited for the inevitable. But suddenly, whoosh! The paper airplane swerved sharply and missed the wood chipper altogether. "Hey, how did that happen?" "I don't know," said Cheeseball. "I'm not steering this thing." The boys barely got their breath, and when a small dog noticed the airplane and came running after them. "Oh no!" cried Cheeseball. "We're going to get eaten by a sausage dog." Fluffy covered his eyes this time. But once you know it, the airplane swerved sharply upward out of the range and the little dog altogether. "Are you doing that?" asked Cheeseball. "No," said Fluffy. "Must be the wind." Finally, the paper airplane landed in a wet, sticky pile of hot tar. "Yuck!" said Fluffy. "What could be worse than getting stuck in a pile of tar? Maybe getting crushed by a big steamroller thingy," said Cheeseball. "You sure have an active imagination," said Fluffy. "No, I don't," said Cheeseball as he looked upwards. "Look!" Oh no! Screamed Fluffy. We're gonna get steamroller thingy to death! Just then, the boys were yanked up the backs of their shirts and carried off through the air to safety. Something got hold of us, cried Cheeseball, but I can't see what it is. It must be Captain Underpants, said Fluffy. We just can't see him because he's so small. Hey, said Cheeseball, I bet he was steering the airplane out of danger too. Our hero! The boys shouted. Chapter 20. Extra, 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 extra large underpants. Fluffy and Cheeseball landed safely in an abandoned alley. We got a large Captain Underpants so we could find Professor Poopypants, said Fluffy. The fate of the entire planet is in our hands. How can we alarm him if we can't even see him? Asked Fluffy. Good question, said Cheeseball. Good question, said Fluffy. Wait, said Cheeseball. I've got an idea. He called out as loud as he could. Captain Underpants, we can't see you, but if you can hear us, fly over and land on my finger. We have a machine that can make you big again. The boys waited a few seconds. Look, Fluffy, said Cheeseball. There he is. See? He's that tiny little speck on my finger. Now aim the machine on that little speck, but don't stop my finger, okay? Don't worry, said Fluffy. I'm a great shot with this thing. I won't stop here. Oops, sorry. The good news was that Captain Underpants had grown larger and was now visible. The bad news was, let's just say that Cheeseball was going to have an awful time picking his nose with his right hand from now on. Fluffy gave Captain Underpants a few more shots from the Goozy Grow 4000. The waist of a bad warrior grew and grew and grew until he was 10 stories high. Finally, the colossal captain headed towards the preposterous professor. A showdown was about to begin. The little boy from chapter 13 happened to be walking by his mother again. He looked up and saw a giant man in his underwear getting ready to fight a huge robot in the middle of the city. Mummy, said the little boy. What? Asked his mother. Never mind, said the boy. Chapter 21. The incredibly graphic violence chapter presented in Flip-O-Rama. Warning. The following scenes contain scenes that are so intense and horrific, they might not be suitable for viewing by people who can't take a joke. If you are easily offended, or you tend to blame all society evils on TV shows and cartoon characters, please make your run to the nearest supermarket and get a life. They are located in the Get Real section next to the clues. Good luck! Introducing Flip-O-Rama. Throughout the history of great art, there have been many times when artists have defined their own unique styles, creating what is known as a movement. For example, there was the Renaissance movement and the Impressionist movement and even the pop art movement. Today, many art scholars agree that the early 21st century may go down in history as a Flip-O-Rama movement. Let's join this great art form and marvel at this emerging cultural significance, shall we? Professor Poopypants packed a powerful punch. But the head-button hero halted the horror. The reef-wearing bandit battled the bionic bee moth. Wait, whoops. The waistband warrior finishes the battle. Won the war. The waistband warrior won the war. Oh God, my stand nearly fell. Flipper robbers are the Captain Underpants Flipper Robber actually looks more like animations. Chapter 22, the 22nd chapter. Poopypants had been defeated, and everybody in the school cheered widely. They were still small, but at least they got their old names back. So glad I don't have a silly name anymore, said Miss Ribble. Me too, said Miss Misdirected. Hooray! Cried George. Let's all give Captain Underpants a big hand. George was not amused. Oops, said George. Sorry. That's okay, said Harold. Just give me the invention so I can send us back to normal. Tap, tap, tap. George held the Goosey Grow to 4,000 in his giant hand and zapped George and himself. That is, every part of him except his giant hand. Suddenly, George and Harold were back to their normal sizes again. Boy, said George, we sure had tested this limit of size today. Yep, said Harold, and the limits of our readers' willing suspension of disbelief. Yeah, said George. That, too. George and Harold picked up their tiny skull and carried it back where it belonged. George got ready to zap the skull with the Goosey Grow 4000, while Harold preferred to zap Captain Underpants with the Shrinky Pig 2000. I hope this works, said George. Me too. Chapter 23. To make a long story short, it did. Chapter 24. The chapter before the last chapter. George took Captain Underpants over to the bushes behind the school and ordered him to dress up like Mr. Crump. Let's go, pal, said George. We haven't got all day. Said George. Then Harold had some fun with the garden hose, and in no time at all, Mr. Crump was back to his old nasty self today. Soon the cops showed up to arrest Professor Poopypants. There's one thing I don't understand, said George to the professor. Wouldn't it be smarter to change your own name instead of forcing the rest of the world to change theirs? Gosh, said Professor Poopypants, I never thought of that. A few weeks later, George and Harold received a letter to the Pequot State Penitentiary. Dear George and Harold, sorry about trying to overthrow the world and everything. I've decided to take your advice and change my name so that people won't laugh at me anymore. From now on, I'll be going by my grandfather's name on my mother's side. It's such a relief knowing that nobody would ever make fun of my name again. Signed, Tippy Tinkle Trousers. Hey, wait a minute. Isn't that Dr. Diaper from the first book? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Chapter 25. The chapter after the chapter before the last chapter. You know, said George, I really learned something today. What's that? Asked Harold. I learned that it's not nice to make fun of people, said George. Wow, said Harold. I think this is the first time our story's ever had a moral. It's probably the last time too, said George. I hope so, said Harold. George and Harold had forgotten all about the other moral they had ever learned along the way, which was don't ever, ever hypnotize your principal. Because if you do, your life could go from bad to worse at a snap of a finger. Snap, snap. Oh no! Screamed Carol. Here we go again! Screamed George. Tra-la-la! Good. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!